Welcome to the bonus mini show of The Overwhelmed Brain. This is the sometimes Wednesday edition of the show where what I have to talk about doesn't necessarily go into the weekend show and doesn't necessarily go into my other podcast, Love and Abuse. So I figured, well, I own this show, so I could probably just put out episodes anytime I want. And if you want to join me for these extra episodes, I'd love to have you here. So this is what we're doing. I do these once in a while, and I'll probably do a lot more of them going forward because I have a lot of emails and I need to catch up. So there's a lot of content out there. A lot of these episodes, I believe, are going to be about relationship issues. So if you're not in a romantic relationship, so to speak, you can still relate to different types of behavior and communication between another person in your life. So unless you're a hermit that lives in a cave, which a lot of us are right now during this pandemic, but if you're not a hermit living in a cave and you actually know someone else or talk with them or have any type of communication with them at all, every time, this is my suggestion, every time you hear an episode that's about some romantic relationship and you're not in one, just think of somebody else you know, because the same principles still apply. So there's going to be differences, of course, if you're married and you're having a marriage issue, and that's not going to apply to you. But I tell you what, there's a lot of family issues that are the same as marriage issues, and we all experience communication issues of some sort. I practice communication every day, just like you. I go the extra mile and study communication and behavior and all kinds of elements of our human existence, especially when it comes to relating to other people. And I still get in the quagmire. I still get into heated conversations. I mean, not the stuff you see on Facebook or political stuff, but things that happen in our lives that we have to interpret for others to show them that we actually had a good intention when we said that. Or we weren't trying to be mean-spirited. We weren't trying to be hurtful. And some people are, but most of us, I think, that listen to shows like this and do the self-help thing aren't trying to be mean or hurtful or abrasive. We're just trying to live our lives and trying to get along and making the best of what we got and doing what we can. And sometimes we just have miscommunication. We have misunderstandings. And what do we do with all those miscommunications and misunderstanding? I mean, they turn into things. They excite our emotional triggers. They turn into a complete breakdown of a mood, of our emotional state, and they can really wipe us out energetically. We can just be exhausted after a conversation where there's a misunderstanding or somebody took us the wrong way and thinks that we're being mean or hurtful. I like to look at the common principle of that we're all just trying to do the best we can with the resources that we have available to us. And those resources are mainly what we have learned and what habits we have developed, what emotional triggers we have developed, and what we're still trying to figure out about ourselves. Because we can go through life and think we've got it all down, and then something happens and we're emotionally triggered. And now we get in someone's face or they get in our face and we get defensive and they get defensive. And argument breaks out or some heated conversation and some huge disagreement or whatever it is. Now we're in a different space, different headspace. We don't feel like hugging. We don't feel like talking it out, making peace. We just want to own what we feel and express what we feel or repress what we feel, which, that brings us in the opposite direction. When we express, we're kind of releasing some energy and letting the pressure out. And when we repress, we're holding it in so it can be destructive, so it can be hurtful to us. It feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? Where we get angry or upset at someone else and we express that anger to someone else, it can be a release in us. It may not solve the problem and make you happy, but it can be a release of that energy or pressure, and you will get your point across. It may not be taken well, but it's sort of out of your system, even though you might still have things to say about it. And so that's the outward expression and releasing of that emotional energy. And then there are the people that repress and hold back and swallow their emotions and stuff it down and make their own lives miserable instead of someone else's. That's like a martyr. It's like someone who says, I will take all this suffering so that you don't have to suffer. Even though I'm mad at you, I will take this suffering on. And so I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I personally think that the more you can express instead of repress, you're better off. So that's, you have to choose your battles wisely, of course. And sometimes you want to express to someone that's going to turn it into a giant fiasco, a giant nightmare that you don't want to deal with. So you choose to repress. And like I said, there's no right or wrong here. You do have to choose wisely. But try to choose you more often, in the sense that if you need to express something to someone else and you feel that they should hear what you have to say, then typically for your mental health and well-being, and sometimes or often your physical health and well-being, typically it's better to express. And sometimes maybe it's not a good idea. So I'm not giving you any direction there, but I do know that when we repress, hold back, stuff it down, if we don't find an outlet, we become, what's my girlfriend say, a black hole of suck. We become damaged, emotionally damaged, and sometimes physically damaged. I held on to anger for so long. I was so angry at my stepfather for a long time, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know I was angry at him. I didn't find out about the anger in me until I realized that I was the common denominator for all the crap that was happening in my life, all the relationships that were failing, all the moments I felt burned out, usually with my job and in friendships, because I kept showing up as somebody else that I didn't want to be, and I would swallow every single thought and emotion because I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want to be confrontational. And I was the people pleaser, and I just wanted to keep the balance because I'm the middle child. You're supposed to keep the balance, and on and on and on. And I have all of these dysfunctions that I brought in from childhood. So I held a lot back, and I didn't know how to express anger. Anger in my house growing up usually came with a flying glass that smashed against the wall. So I didn't want to be that guy. And I didn't want to drink because my stepfather was an alcoholic. So drinking equals bad. And so I have these beliefs that sometimes are true with certain people and sometimes aren't with other people. But I generalized and made it true with everyone. So this is what we do. We bring all these beliefs and ideas and perceptions about the world from childhood, and we bring them to our adult world, and suddenly we're acting kind of strangely, and we're doing things that may not be healthy for us, like repressing all this stuff, which is why I say, coming back, that you do need an outlet if you don't have one. And I'm not necessarily here to talk about this at all today, really. I'm going to get into something else, but I just wanted to kind of mention this because I started talking about it. When you express, there is a release, and it does help you feel better. It does help your mental health. And when you choose wisely and express with people that aren't going to physically attack you or put you in harm's way, then you actually get to complete the release. You get to close the loop that might be open. See, the loop stays open. That's when you complete the circuit. It's like there's a bridge that crosses between two islands. So if you want to look at this as completing the circuit, you can walk across the bridge, and if the bridge isn't complete yet, there's that island over there. You can see it, and you want what's on it. You want to visit it, but you can't get there because the bridge isn't complete. So it's out there. You can see it, but you can't do anything about it. So you walk back. Then somebody comes along or some company and completes the bridge. Next time you walk across it, whoa, it's complete. Now I can finish the journey. I can close this open loop. I can complete the circuit. And once I get on the other side and I'm over the bridge, now I have an addition to my life, something new, something to explore. This is what happens inside of us. When we are able to close these open loops, like the anger toward my stepfather, I'm just going to hold on to that for the rest of my life. That'll be an open loop that I'll never be able to close. But what would happen if I built the bridge and I closed that loop? I completed the circuit and I was able to cross that bridge. That's what I did. I did that in my mid-30s when I had a breakdown and I realized how much anger I was holding on to. And this is where my original point of the physical problems that can develop from holding on to these negative emotions, this is real stuff. I mean, I ended up with so much heartburn and I had an acidic stomach, and I hate to admit my breath stunk all the time because of this. And it was all because I was holding on to negativity. Because the day I was able to finally admit, or at least uncover, that I had all this anger that I didn't even know about towards someone that I didn't even realize I hated, because hating is wrong, right? But I didn't even realize I hated my stepfather. And I was always told that hating someone is wrong, so I never let myself go there. But I decided to allow myself to hate and allow myself to be angry at him and cry and fall on the floor and, just lose it. Sometimes you have to have this breakdown to reach that breakthrough. So I allowed it to happen. It happened. And it was embarrassing because I did it in front of this person that I just met, my soon-to-be future wife, that I wasn't even aware that I was going to marry. And then later on, I'm not married anymore. Another story, another time. But it happened, and it needed to happen. And after that, I still had anger issues, meaning I was unable to express it. But over the years, I dealt with those anger issues. So the anger and hatred toward my stepfather came out, and that was a big relief and release. And that helped me. But over the years, after I learned that it was okay, that at that moment I learned that it was okay to be angry, I was able to express anger. And every time I did, every time I felt a truth come out of me, sometimes in the form of anger, sometimes in the form of the fear of confrontation, but I'm going to be confrontational anyway. Every time I did that, I felt a little better inside of me. And fast forward, multiply that exponentially by the number of years that I worked on this, and pretty soon I had no more indigestion, I had no more acid, I had no more bad breath. It all went away. And believe me, I went to doctors to try to get these physical problems resolved, but they were emotional problems that manifested into physical problems. I'm not saying you shouldn't see a doctor. I'm not saying that all your physical problems have to do with this. I'm saying look at your emotional state as one of the components that applies to your physical health. I think that's smart. I think that's normal. The bridge between the mind and the body is fully built. It is fully there. In fact, there is no real bridge. It's just combined. So when you are emotionally healthy, your physical health benefits from it. So, like I said, I didn't mean to get into all of that today. I do want to read an email that may or may not have a question. This came in a while back, and I'm just going to read through it and comment on it as I read through it, and we'll see where we get. I don't actually think it's a question, but there might be things to talk about there. Also, before I really get into that, I do want to say that I am so grateful that this episode is sponsored by Best Fiends. This is a game that you can use on your Android or your iPhone, and it is a little easy to get into puzzle game that gets increasingly more challenging, more fun, because there's little characters, little slugs and bugs and all kinds of things. But they reached out and they said, hey, we want to sponsor an episode. So I said, okay, before you do that, I need to play this thing to make sure I like it because I don't want to tell everyone to go download this game and have it be something just boring, or have it be like so many ads that they can't stand using it. Well, I've been playing it for quite some time now, quite a few weeks, and I don't even think it has ads. I think this is one of those apps that they really care about the user experience. So I'm going to tell you about it. It's called Best Fiends. It's like friends without the R, Fiends. And if you are looking for a fun way to pass the time while engaging your brain and enjoy amazing visuals and a gripping story, then your answer is Best Fiends, which is a casual game that anyone can play. It's actually made for adults. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to say that. I mean, because kids can play it too, but they say it is a casual game, and you can spend as much or as little time as you'd like. So it's not one of those things where you have to go into some 60-minute story-driven mode that you can't stop until it's done. And all you do is just swipe your finger, match some shapes and pictures and things like that, and those disappear and it drops a level, and it's like a matching game, but you get to drag your finger, and it's unique how it's done. So it's really cool and it's really fun, and it can take up 1 minute of your time, or you can spend hours playing it if you want, but it really is a unique puzzle experience, unlike any puzzle games out there. So I encourage you to check it out. Go to Google Play or the Apple Store. What is it called? The Apple Store. And download the game called Best Fiends. It doesn't require internet to play like some of the games that we know. Maybe you don't know, but I've had to deal with that before. So you don't need to be connected to the internet and waste your battery or anything like that, or use cellular data. And I would highly encourage you to engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must-play. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. Download Best Fiends free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. All right, so let me get into this email. Somebody wrote to me and said, "Hey, Paul, I love your podcast, and if you would like to use my story for your show, maybe you could help someone that has the same problems with leaving an emotionally abusive relationship or leaving a narcissist." Again, if you're not in a romantic relationship or you're not connected to an emotionally abusive person or a narcissist, there's always something we can relate to with another person. So just keep that in mind if you really can't connect with this yet. So she says, "I am very proud of myself, even though society doesn't recognize that as a big deal. Here's my story, and it's totally okay to use my name." Oh, okay. So this is from Donna. I'm not going to say her last name, but Donna, thank you for this message. I'm not done with it yet, but she said it's okay to use my name. She says, "I've been married to a narcissist for 18 years, and I have 2 teenage boys and a daughter in her 20s from my first marriage. It feels like it's going to take forever to heal from all the abuse I've been through. I've been divorced for over a year now. I just found your podcast a few weeks ago, and it helps me so much to know that I was in a toxic relationship. I always thought he was going to change." And like I said, I'm going to comment on this as we go through it. So in a toxic relationship, when you believe or think someone is going to change, how do I say this? You're wrong more often than you're right. In fact, I want you to think of everybody that you hoped would change. Think of anybody that you hoped would change. Did they? Because in my life, I can't think of one person where I said, "Gee, I hope they'll change," and I'll even go further and see that they're hurting me, or see how they're being and realize, "Oh, that's bad behavior. I should stop." There's a lot of hope there, but more often than not, the person doesn't change. And it's usually because we want them to, but they don't think they have to. I want that person to change, but they seem fine with who they are. Those are typically the people that are less likely to change. I'm not saying they won't change, because I was that person. I was the person that you could look at and go, "Well, he seems okay with who he is. Why would he want to change?" And that was true. I was okay with who I was. And I wasn't that nice. I mean, I was a nice guy. I showed up in relationships and friendships as charming and nice and kind and caring and supportive and generous, all the good stuff. but I was also judgmental and critical and possessive and jealous. Wow, how many more? I could probably name a bunch, but I was that guy, and I didn't think those negative qualities about me were a problem. And because I didn't think they were a problem, there was no need for me to change. So it took my own failures for me to become enlightened enough, not totally enlightened, but enlightened enough to tell myself, hey, Paul, you really need to figure this stuff out because everything in your life keeps failing. You are the common denominator. So I took that advice that I gave myself. I said, you need to work on this. You need to focus on yourself. I mean, if you want the magic formula from healing, from being a critical, possessive, jealous, whatever person, the magic formula is one line, one sentence, and that is stop focusing on other people and start focusing on yourself. And what that meant for me was stop focusing on trying to change other people and start focusing on healing myself. That's the magic formula. You don't have to listen to anything else I ever say again. Stop trying to change other people. Focus on yourself. Because as soon as you focus on yourself and heal yourself, those who support you will love you and want to be with you and surround you. And those who don't support that, you honoring yourself, you respecting yourself, you loving yourself, won't want to be with you because they want to control you or change you or whatever it is. I'm not saying this is totally black and white like that, but this is what happens. The more you work on yourself, I said this in my last episode, the more you shine. The more you shine, the more certain people want to be in your light. Certain people don't want to be in your light. This is how it works. You continue working on yourself, improving yourself, getting mentally well, getting healthy, and doing everything you can to show up in the world as the best version of yourself, and you get the best version of other people. And you get to find out who supports that and who doesn't. So it's a very simplified perspective of that, but that's kind of a magic formula for everything I teach. But of course, there are practical things that you need to do to work on yourself. Well, you don't need to, but I offer those practical suggestions and thoughts on this show, my opinions, that you can choose to use or not. Totally up to you. But I wanted to stop and mention that because when somebody says, I thought he was going to change or I thought she was going to change, that's a lot of focus on someone else waiting for them to show up the way you want them to show up. When really, focus on yourself. Now, I'm not talking about narcissism. There's a certain part of the human experience that doesn't exist with narcissism, and that's empathy. There's more to it, but if you don't have empathy for someone else and you are also focusing on yourself, then you might be diving into somewhat, maybe some narcissistic tendencies, or who knows. I mean, I'm not here to diagnose that, but what I want to say is focusing on yourself is really about self-care. It's about self-compassion, self-love, self-respect, and all of those wonderful things that your best friend would give you, or a healthy mom or dad. Notice the word healthy. Some moms and dads aren't that healthy, and that's what happens sometimes. But a healthy parent, a healthy caretaker, somebody who actually has your best interest in mind and wants you to be happy. That's what you should do for yourself. You should want yourself to be happy. And just like Donna said in this email, I'm proud of myself. That's what I want for you. I want you to be proud of yourself. And then when you feel that, other people that support your pride in yourself, it's a healthy pride, are good people to have around you. So let me get off that tangent and come right back to here. This email goes on, says, and he still makes me feel bad because I walked away from my 2 teenage boys. Okay, so I'm going to stop there as well. We have to be careful how we word things. When you say, I walked away from my 2 teenage boys, it makes me think that you saw your teenage boys as 2 people to walk away from. Like they were unhealthy for you in some way. I mean, this is just how you worded it. I know you don't mean that. At least I guess you don't mean that. But I'm going to assume you do not mean that you walked away from your boys. Because what I'm reading here is that you had to walk away from an unhealthy situation and walk toward yourself so that you could be a healthier person for your teenage boys. for yourself as well, of course, but for those who love and support you, including yourself. You love and support yourself. Your boys love and support you. You sometimes have to do this with people. You sometimes have to walk away from certain people so that you can show up as the best version of yourself for those people, so that they can see you're in a better space, in a better place, happier, healthier, and that's what they want for you. So I noticed the wording. You just have to be careful how you word this stuff. Not because it's necessarily bad to say that. I just think it's a subconscious thing. Like Donna might think that she walked away from people she loved, which puts a negative connotation on it. It probably makes her feel like, you know what? It probably makes her feel terrible. And so this is important. When you word things in a certain way that put you down in a way that almost validates someone else's perspective, in this case, I'm going to assume the narcissist in the relationship, probably validates his words to her, because I guarantee you he probably made her feel bad by saying, "You're walking away from this family. It's your fault." That's just terrible. What a guilt trip to play on someone, especially someone who's, kind and caring and supportive and empathetic, which I'm going to assume Donna is. Donna, you didn't walk away from your teenage boys. You walked toward yourself so that you could be the best damn mom you could possibly be for your teenage boys. You just have to make sure how you word things so that you don't end up convincing yourself of what some narcissist tried to make you believe. I don't want that for you. So I'm going to continue here. She says, I live in one state and I'm moving to another state. My daughter lives there, and she has helped me tremendously through this process. One of my sons will be moving there in the summer, so I'm leaving behind my other son, and he kind of knows how his dad is and some of the stuff he thinks is funny and sometimes acts like his father. My question is, how does someone become a narcissist? Okay, so there is a question in here. How does someone become a narcissist? Can my son become like him? What do I do to stop this cycle? I feel so guilty that I didn't leave years ago. Well, let me address these questions really quick. How does someone become a narcissist? Some people, they say, are born with narcissistic personality disorder. And the way I view a narcissist is someone who had not developed empathy or empathetic skills or connection emotionally, either because they were deprived of it, or it's a little beyond my education, but maybe they inherited it through their genes, through their DNA, or throughout life, they just learned to close off their emotions. If you go through life not thinking about how someone else feels about what you do, you're going to do pretty much anything that you want to do. Really, because you don't care what other people think. Typically, narcissists don't care. If you are crying in front of them and you want them to see your pain and feel your pain, you're not going to get it. The true narcissist won't be able to express it because he can't relate to it. He's just not connected at that level. This is why I get a lot of emails from a lot of women, but some men too, that say, what is going on here? When I am in pain, how come that person can't see that I'm in pain, and especially that they're causing it? And then when they find out they're causing it, they don't seem to care. They don't. They won't care. They're just not capable of it in the moment. I have a personal belief that you can develop empathy if you don't have it. And the way to do that is you find out what the person who seems to have no empathy, what would cause them pain or suffering if they lost it. And if it's someone in a relationship, they may not feel the pain if they lost someone in their life. It may not be a person. Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's a baseball they caught at the baseball game. I mean, what do they care about so much that if they lost it, it would hurt them? It would cause them pain of some sort. If you can identify that and use that in an analogy for what you're experiencing, they might be able to have a connection. Meaning, let's just say it's their favorite baseball and it's signed by 20 members of some team, and if they lost, that is their prized possession. They love it. They show it to everyone. They would never want to lose it. And you come along and they say something mean or hurtful, and you start crying or you're really hurt, and you say, when you say that, you really hurt me. And they don't seem to care or they can't understand. You could ask them, what would happen if you couldn't find your baseball? What would happen if it burned up in a fire? How would you feel? If they say, oh my God, I would be devastated. I would lose my favorite possession in the world. That might be a way for them to start to feel what it might be like for you to feel pain. And pain is usually a loss of something. Not usually, but a lot of the times it's a loss of something. So if they lost something they cared about, and you can relate their loss to what your loss is, your pain, you might be able to start to get through. But it may not stick. So this is a roundabout way to answer the question, how does someone become a narcissist? And I kind of expanded upon it, but I do believe that some people just have trouble developing empathy. And that's a huge part of it, because if you don't care what anybody else thinks, you're going to do whatever you want, and you're going to do whatever it takes. Because who cares? You know what? If I don't care what anybody else thinks, I'm just going to do whatever I want. That sounds pretty black and white. And if you don't care, you'll just go about your business and steamroll over people. It doesn't matter. It all becomes a personal acquisition of happiness, whatever makes you happy, for the narcissist, I should say. So I don't have the full answer to your question, but that's kind of where I go with that, because I want to keep this relatively short. Your second question is, can my son become like him? Yes, I won't lie. It can happen. But has your son shown empathy? Because I know a sociopath, probably verifiable sociopath, who has a son, whose son I've seen many times be empathetic, compassionate, generous, caring. And I've also seen some of the narcissistic tendencies that sociopaths have. So yes, this person could develop more of those tendencies, the ones we don't like, narcissism, sociopath, more selfishness, but at the same time, there'll be a conflict in there with his moral and ethical compass. There'll be a conflict in there. So it will be difficult for him to maintain that, especially if he realizes his actions hurt others. Because the empathetic person will wake up when they realize they're hurting another person. So if your son doesn't show empathy, there's more of a chance of a narcissistic outcome, or at least narcissistic tendencies. But if your son has ever showed empathy, then he has it. And it usually wins, because people with empathy don't want to hurt other people, typically. They just don't. They would feel bad if they found out they were the cause of hurting someone else. So that's my belief. Can your son become like his dad? Yes. Will it happen? If he has empathy, it still may happen, but empathy usually wins. The moral compass, the ethical compass, the emotional feedback that he's going to get from being narcissistic or anything like that is going to hit him and realize, oh, gee, I don't like when that person cries. When I do that, I better not do that anymore because I feel bad. So look for that. Your next question is, what do I do to stop this cycle? This question has an answer that I'm going to keep very basic. You need to be the most loving and supportive person you can be. In other words, focus on yourself, be the best you can be, and be there for your kids. And try not to be disagreeable with your kids. Meaning, if they come to you and say, oh, I really want to spend time with Dad, this weekend, try not to disagree. Support it. Support their relationships. Because typically with a narcissistic ex, what's going to happen is that they're going to talk badly about you. They're going to try to make you look bad. They're going to try to say anything they can to convince their kids that you're a bad person. I hope that's not happening, but that does happen a lot. But when you show up as the opposite, not necessarily like, oh, your dad's the greatest thing in the world. No, not like that at all. But not defending yourself, not putting your ex-husband down, and being totally supportive of the kids. And if they say that they want to spend time with their dad or whatever, you say, hey, whatever you want to do, I love you, I support you. anything that you want to do. I mean, within reason. I support your decisions, and I'm here to help you and guide you if you want my help. When they get to an age where they think they know everything, it's helpful to show that you support their belief that they know everything. It's helpful to support their belief that they're grown up, that they are adults now. And one of your children is an adult. So it's helpful to not talk them out of anything. And if they ask, well, what would you do? You can tell them the truth. If they ask, well, how do you feel about Dad? You can tell them the truth. But again, you don't want to be so opinionated. Like that son of a, you don't want to do that. You just want to be calm. You just want to explain things the best way you can so it doesn't look like you're the bad guy. Because that's what happens. The narcissistic ex wants their ex-spouse to look like the bad guy. And your ex might say, well, your mom's going to say this about me, and it's all lies, and she says that because she doesn't care about you, and she doesn't, whatever he's going to say, it's probably going to be all lies. He's going to say that you're lying. But if you're always calm, and you're always supportive, and you're always loving, and you're showing up the best way you can for them, that's what rubs off on your children. And they feel empowered to decide for themselves, whereas the narcissist is trying to convince them how to think and how to feel. And kids are smart. They figure it out. They may not figure it out for years. This can take a while sometimes, but they do figure it out, because as long as you're always supportive, they're going to go, Dad always told me what to think and feel, and Mom always said it was my choice. That is so much more free. People feel restricted when they're being convinced or being told that they need to think or feel a certain way. They'll figure it out. So that's how you stop the cycle. You be the most supportive, loving, caring, generous person you can be. Try not to be too opinionated. Try not to badmouth your ex, because it's still their father. They have a different experience than you do. And just try to be the most supportive you can be in a way that allows them to really believe they have a choice in what they can do, what they can think. Because to empower someone with the ability to choose for themselves, even when we disagree, is the most freeing, loving thing we can do sometimes. I know they're still kids. When they're kids, we do have to guide them. Hey, if you do that, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to break your leg. You can still say little things like that. But when it comes to affairs of the heart, the emotions, you have to be careful how you guide someone so it doesn't appear that you're trying to convince them to make choices that they may not be ready to make, and they may not be ready to hear why, and on and on. And so it's important to make sure that they still feel empowered. It's always about leaving them with an empowered feeling. All right, so she goes on to say, the last couple of years, my ex could feel I was just about done with him, so he became more and more needy of my time. Okay, very common. Someone who doesn't want the relationship to end because they want to control you and keep you in their life will develop tactics to make sure that they play on your compassion, your empathy, your emotions. And this is something he might have been doing. He became more needy of her time. As long as he is preoccupying all of her time, she's not going to have time to think about when to go or have time to make plans to leave. So it sounds like Donna really figured this out. Good for you, Donna. She said it was very exhausting. Let me see. He made me feel like he was making me his property. It's a very common sign. You are an extension of a narcissist. If you are around a narcissist, if you know a narcissist, you are pretty much an extension of them. You are a function in their life. If you don't serve a function of some sort, you are useless. And they have no problem making you useless because they have no empathy. But as long as you serve a function, they're going to appear to be serving you as well. Or in her case, it's different in a romantic relationship. But, friends of narcissists, they all have a function in that narcissist's life to get the narcissist needs met. It's called narcissistic supply. So it's important for the narcissist to have these people that function in their life. And so a wife or husband of a narcissist is going to have certain functions. One of them might be getting fed. One of them might be taking care of the kids. One of them might be for sex. One of them might be washing the car, washing the clothes, keeping the house, whatever it is. The narcissist needs people that have a function in their life. So that's why people are an extension of the narcissist, because they have a function. It's like one of their arms or legs. A person's arm, it has a function. So people in the narc's life will also have a function, and their usefulness to the narcissist makes them that extension. So let me continue. He has cheated and lied several times the entire marriage. So we went the open marriage route. That was a disaster. Nothing was ever good enough. He has mentally, verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, and financially abused me. Wow. Sorry to hear this, Donna. I feel like I have a long way to go to recover from this. For years, people have told me to leave him, and I didn't. Even his own parents told me to run. He doesn't speak to them either. I can't get into the details of what this has done to me because it would not be appropriate, but I could write a book. Writing is hard for me, though. I can't believe I wrote this much today. I do want to tell my story because I feel like I need to help others in this situation. He still keeps telling me he's going to change if I come back home. Oh, geez. But he goes the other route and says he can't wait till I move, so I am completely out of his life. So let me track back here. She says he still keeps telling me he's going to change if I come back home. So if that's not the biggest red flag ever, I hope, Donna, you see this. This is in the past. You wrote this a while back. But if you don't see that as a red flag, Donna, please do. If anyone listening, if you listening right now don't see this as a red flag, please do. If anyone says, I promise I'll change if you do this, or if you're in my life again, if you move back, if we get back together, huge red flag. Stay away. Why am I saying that? Because hopefully you know, but if you don't know, the reason I'm saying that is that is external focus. That is someone who says, the only reason I'm changing is you. And if you weren't in my life, I'm going to stay this way. And even when you come back, I'm still that way, but I'm going to show you this facade. I'm going to show you this faux me, F-A-U-X. I'm going to show you this person that you want to see so that I get what I want, which is probably you back in my life. But the problem with that is if somebody doesn't change for themselves, it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. It just goes away. So finally, let's just say that Donna went back to him and he did change and he was showing up, and 1 month went by and 2 months went by and Donna feels so secure now that he has changed. He really seems to have changed. It wears off and he starts showing little signs of him going back to his status quo, his homeostasis. What is homeostasis? It's where we land when all of our defenses are down and we stop pretending. And that's what happens with somebody who changes for someone else, is they put on this huge facade, this huge false front that shows this other person everything they want to see. And then the person that's putting up the false front starts to introduce their old behaviors, their old homeostatic state behaviors back into the relationship, sort of like a dog. Let me explain that. A dog that's testing boundaries. Well, children do this too, but I don't want to equate children and dogs, but there's a lot of similarities. When you have a dog, they will try to figure out where the boundary walls are with you. Can I go in the kitchen? I can. I guess I can go in the kitchen anytime. Can I put my feet on the counter? Oh, that's bad. I better not do that. Can I put my feet on the counter when they're not looking? Oh, yes, I can. There's no accountability. Great. Can I reach that ham? Yes, I can. I can pull it off the counter. Suddenly I get yelled at. Oh, why am I getting yelled at? Because I'm eating ham on the floor? Okay, I get it. No ham on the floor. They're not associating maybe. And then they get caught with their paws on the counter, and then they realize, oh, so even when no one's looking, I'm not supposed to have my paws on the counter. So now I get it. But what the dog is doing is he's testing all these vulnerabilities, these little exploits in your household, in your system. And once he finds an exploit, he utilizes it. Not because he doesn't care, but because he wants to know what the boundaries are. This is what narcissists and toxic people will do as well. They test your boundaries. They find out where you have a problem with something. And if you have a problem with it, what is the accountability? Because toxic people will do that. They will poke at your boundaries. They will try to push through them. And when you get upset, but there's no accountability, like you don't leave or you don't threaten to leave or whatever it is, don't take something away that they'll miss, then they'll do it again because there's no accountability. You might have threatened to do something, but you never did it. So if you don't do it, there's no reason for them to stop pushing the boundaries. So that's what happens, is that you could be in a relationship that you got back together and someone changed for you, but then they introduced these little elements of their old personality, which is really their only personality. And now it comes out, and now you're in the mess again. So when you get back with someone who changed for you, it almost always, if not always, ends up a disaster because their old behavior comes out again. So we just have to be careful about that. Moving on. Most of the time, I can't explain what he's doing to me, but with your podcast, I have an understanding of how this happens and why it happens, and that I'm not alone and I'm doing the right thing for me. Yep, and we're almost done with this. I'm just going to say that, yes, when you are in an emotionally abusive relationship, you can almost never pinpoint exactly how someone is making you feel bad. You can find certain behaviors and go, well, he did this and he said that, but why do I still feel guilty? Why do I still feel like I'm to blame? That's why I sell the Mean Workbook at Love and Abuse. It helps you pinpoint that stuff. I'm not going to turn that into an ad. I'm just saying emotional abuse is very difficult to pinpoint because it happens over a period of time. And I've said this before, but if you did something that I would consider emotionally abusive, somebody else may look at that behavior and say to you, what? My husband does that too, and he loves me, and there's no problem. Or my wife, or whatever. Or I do that, and I don't know what you see wrong with that. And it's true. Emotionally abusive behavior typically can't be defined in the moment because it'll be a behavior that seems benign, seems like a lot of us could do, and probably do. But the problem is the behavior can't be defined until it compounds among days, weeks, and even years to the point where it's repetitive in a pattern. So a lot of emotional abuse has to do with repetition and patterns. When it happens, when you describe a single event to someone and say, this is what he does, the person that you're explaining it to may not get it because it's going to be very singular in their mind. But if they do it over and over and over again, and they're rubbing that same wound over and over and over again, you can feel it, but you still have trouble pinpointing what they're doing, and it's even harder to explain it to someone else. So I totally get what she means by saying, I can't even explain what he's doing to me. So moving on. Thank you so much for being a great teacher and mentor. Well, thank you, Donna. I appreciate that. I believe you are helping many people like me. I have never been in a healthy relationship, so all of this is scary to me. I am almost 50 years old, and my big question for myself is, now what? My kids are grown, no husband. I do love being a people pleaser. Why is that such a bad thing, she asks. And I am tired of people telling me I need to focus on myself. Oh, great. So I just spent the whole beginning of this email telling you to focus on yourself. But I hope it came across in a way where you took it as self-love and self-care, not necessarily don't focus on anyone else. Don't ever do anything for anyone else. It's all about self-compassion. And it sounds like you're already doing that. So I hope I didn't turn you off with all this focus on yourself stuff. But I still believe on that. But it sounds like you're already doing that. So if you are already being told that over and over again and you're already doing it, yeah, I could totally understand. And you asked about why is being a people pleaser such a bad thing? It's not, as long as it doesn't drain you. That's my only caveat with people pleasing, is that if you are a people pleaser, no problem. If you are a people pleaser and it drains you to be one, that's a problem. People pleasing usually involves being overly compassionate with other people and not compassionate enough with yourself. So if you are a people pleaser, that is a superpower because people like that can be wonderful to be around. but you do have to do it in moderation, and you have to be careful not to push people's boundaries, because people pleasers will tend to do things for people that people don't necessarily want done. They will tend to be overly helpful when people don't necessarily want help. So people pleasing is a wonderful resource, a wonderful tool to reach in your bag whenever you need it, but it can also be damaging to relationships if you are violating others' boundaries. And I'll give an example. Let's just say I said, I'm really thirsty. The people pleaser is going to be like, oh, let me get you a drink right away. And I said, no. I don't want a drink. I just, I'm going to get one when I leave. The people pleaser is going to be like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to get you a drink. If you're thirsty, no problem. I'm going to get it. And I'm going to say, no. I'm going to get a drink. I have a specific drink in mind, and I'm going to get a drink. It's no problem at all. Please sit down. Don't worry about it. People pleaser are going to be like, don't be ridiculous. I'll get it. You don't have to move a muscle. If you're thirsty, I'm there. And believe it or not, that's a boundary violation. I told the people pleaser my boundaries, and the people pleaser didn't listen. When people pleasers don't listen to your no, your NO, then it's a boundary violation. So this is the issue that people pleasers can run into, is that they will tend to violate people's boundaries by being what they believe to be nice. But it's really, they're not listening. They're not honoring the other person's request. I had to learn this. I had to learn to go through this, because I was the guy who said, yes, no problem. Hey, sit down. I'll take care of you. That's not a bad quality as long as it's welcome. But I had to learn to listen for the no thanks and honor that. And that was hard. I mean, it should be easy, but it was hard. Somebody said, no, thanks. I got it. I'd be like, okay. And then I'll sit back down. I mean, I don't do that every single time, every time, because some people do want it and they never say what they want. But I will say maybe, are you sure? And they'll go, no, I'm sure. And I'll be like, okay, great. And then I'll honor it, and then I'll move on. So you do have to watch that. If you have people-pleasing tendencies, or if you're a people pleaser, be careful not to push people's boundaries, violate them, and also be careful not to drain yourself, because people-pleasing can be very draining. All right, she goes on to say, I do love myself and my nature, but I don't want to be anyone's doormat anymore. Good. Good for you. And yes, I have been listening to stuff on boundaries, and I am a Christian, and it helps me a lot. Great. So she knows about boundaries. She's aware of those. And, people pleasers don't always know about the way I just talked about boundaries, because they don't realize they're violating them. But hopefully she's not doing that. But if she is, it might be something she has to work on. So Donna, if you're listening. And she has a religious belief. She has faith. So she uses that as well. It serves her. Wonderful. But I feel like I'm never going to be able to be myself, or someone's going to take advantage of me. I don't want to play the victim anymore. I just want to move on. But I do think about him a lot. I kind of feel sorry for his soul, and I think sometimes he does want to get better, but now that's his identity, and he doesn't know what to do either. Bottom line is, I don't want to change on being a people pleaser, and he doesn't want to change on being a narcissist, a marriage that never would have worked. I know I'm going to be okay. I now live in another state with a new life, and I live close to my daughter, and my son graduated high school, and he'll be moving here too. Still breaks my heart that my youngest son is staying with his dad. People do judge me that I walked away from my boys to save myself, or maybe I just feel that people judge me. So she is probably hearing this, maybe from other Christians perhaps, because there is that whole thing, you got to stay married and, till death do you part. That's a huge guilt trip. I'm not saying anything about Christianity, but there's a huge guilt trip in there, and not too many loopholes where if somebody's abusing you, you should be able to get out, from my understanding of Christian teachings. But it is important, if we're going to talk about Christian teachings, God, whatever your beliefs are, I do think it's important to remember that if you have a religious belief and you do believe in God or some sort of higher power or some sort of higher consciousness, that it probably has your best interest in mind. It probably wants you to be happy and healthy and cared for and supported. And when you're in a relationship that you're in the opposite situation, I think it's important to look at the lifelines that come out of the blue to steer you in a different direction. That's all I'm going to say about that. She finishes with, I hope you can use this to help others. You have such great words of wisdom. Thank you for reading this. Okay, done with the email. Thank you so much, Donna, for sending this email. I am so glad to read that you're in a better space today. It's been a while since I got this email, so I'm going to reply to you and tell you to listen to this episode. I'm talking about you, and I appreciate you. And anyone listening today, I am so grateful for you. I hope that you got something of value from this episode. I hope that you're able to get into a better space, no matter what's going on in your mind, in your body, and in your life, that you're able to persevere, you're able to get through it and stay strong and stay empowered. How do you stay empowered? You stop getting into situations that feel so restrictive. That's one way. And like I was talking about the kids earlier, you empower kids, at least in one way, by giving them a choice, by letting them know you support their choices. You may not always agree with their choices, and you may have to stop them from doing certain things, or at least try to convince them, but it's not always about convincing. Like the toxic person's always going to try to convince the kids that somebody else is a bad person, where the healthy person is going to say, you know what, I want you to make up your own mind. Like one of the things I've said over on Love and Abuse podcast is that when it comes to kids and like sharing custody, I mean, this is probably what she has to go through too, sharing custody with a toxic person, and the toxic person's talking bad about her or you or whoever their ex is. When the healthy person hears that from the kid comes home and says, well, Daddy said you were this, and Daddy said you don't like us, and Daddy said you're doing this because you're just a mean person. You know, whatever the kids say, it's always helpful to be more questioning than offended or defensive. It's always more helpful to be more questioning. So what you do is become curious. Really? Daddy said that? You know, there's a question. And then followed up with something like, what do you believe? What do you believe to be true? Do you think that's true? Is another question. Do you think that I'm like that? What do you think? That's a great question for kids that are getting fed misinformation or damaging information, because it shows them that you trust the child. You trust them. So I hope that helps. Thank you, Donna, and thank you for tuning in. This was going to be a short episode. I had no idea I had that much content for today. So I apologize if this was way too long, but at the same time, maybe this was perfect. I appreciate you. Thanks for tuning into this bonus episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. And I think I'm getting thirsty because I haven't stopped talking. I appreciate you. You're amazing. We'll talk again on the regular episode.